Well, thank you for having us here today. I'll try to make it less about me or about my kids who may inevitably knock down the door behind me in some sort of sick April Fool's prank. But thank you for having us here, and welcome, Marissa. I know Aaron and Adam just sort of kicked it off in touching upon the pandemic, and we'll just kind of go from there about changing behaviors. So first and foremost, I mean, the pandemic has changed the way that we live, right? And ultimately the way that we shopped over the past year. So what are some of the changes or shifts that you've undergone during this time as an org?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, everybody, I'm sure all organizations have done the whole work from home. We've been home for over a year. Don't know when we're going back. We, before the pandemic, we had already made the announcement, just in terms of following consumer behavior, that we were going to close our retail stores. And that was just, again, to follow consumer behavior, that more and more people were shopping online. So either through our direct e-com and then through our resellers, both reseller e-com and reseller brick and mortar. So we were a little bit ahead of the game, not on purpose by any means, but we were a little ahead of the game. I would say when we look at the pandemic and how that affected things, it's not so much about how it changed the like how we were working, but really emphasize the importance of having contingency plans and emphasize the importance of being very nimble and able to pivot, because there were countless plans that we had to adjust, throw out, you know, completely rebuild. So as we got towards the latter half of the year, we got really good at having backup plans on top of backup plans to make sure that we were covered. And we ended up having to use a few of them. So it was a really good thing to just be flexible.
That's great to hear. And yeah, as I had mentioned to you in prep for this, my last in-person meeting was up at Bose in Massachusetts. So serendipitous that we're here, hopefully as we are coming out of this, but really, really interested in the way that Bose really speaks to the customers, right? So what does customer centricity mean for Bose? And as you talked about that changing behavior, how have your media strategies, possibly adjusted to remove friction, during the research or shopper journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. So from a customer centricity standpoint, everything that we do is trying to keep the customer at the core. It's by no means is there a one size fits all for the customers. There are so many different segments, there are sub segments. So we try really hard to keep the customer at the core, but understand all those different groups and who we want to talk to, how we want to talk to them, understand what their passions are, how they engage with content. All those things come together and really inform and impact our creative, our strategic approach, where and how we want to talk to them. From looking at how we can reduce friction across the journey, I would say, in full transparency, it's definitely a work in progress. Rome was not built overnight, so we're trying to make and become stronger here. I think we've made some really big strides in helping make sure that the customer journey is more seamless. For me, I just want to make it easy for the customer. I want them to be able to, be aware of our brand and engage with the brand, and then follow through all the way down to conversion wherever their preference is, in the most simplistic manner. So some of the things that we've looked at have been bringing that shopping experience more to the forefront, making a lot of our social more shoppable. This past year was the first time we ever really specifically drove to some of our reseller partners like Walmart, like Amazon, and others, so that we were showcasing that easy step. If your preference is to shop at Walmart, here you go. We're one click away. So from that perspective, I would just say, just make it simple, make it easy. They don't want barriers, especially in today's world where there's really a lot less patience. We need to make it easy.
Yeah, fewer clicks, right? Let them shop where they want to shop and ultimately buy how they want to buy, right? And we're
Exactly.
encountering a lot of that at Walmart and many other retailers too. We've all been forced to pivot.
Hmm.
You talked about social there as being one area of bringing sort of Bose to the forefront. What other maybe experiences or platforms are you trying or investing in to enhance that customer experience?
Yeah, for sure. Social is definitely a big one, and exploring some of the newer social platforms as well. So we've gone deeper than I probably originally thought we would have in TikTok this past year. We're starting to explore Clubhouse a bit because as an audio platform and as an audio brand, there's a nice synergy there. Some of the other areas, audio is a big one. Audio has been it's interesting, right? Because audio is more of that laid back environment, podcast in particular, but from a brand perspective, and all the research will show you that consumers love podcasts. Like they trust podcast hosts like they trust their best friends. So it is so funny to me, and I get it. I love podcasts too. So we're continuing to explore audio and seeing how we can make that work for us. Um, and lots of different ways of diving into really just how we can have more creative content speaking to our audiences in a way where they're most engaged. So those are the big ones. It's funny, we still have some traditional channels that work really well for the brand too. Like traditional linear TV works well. So it's a balancing act of which audience segment we're going after, what our communication message is, and making sure we have the right mix.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Like gotta fish where the fish are, and clearly as an audio company, audio makes a ton of sense there. Um, really seeking out where those fish are, right? So I think what's interesting is the life cycle of your products is quite long, right? So the purchase funnel is a little bit longer. It would be a lower velocity. How are you sort of uncovering some of these shoppers? How are you bringing Bose to new customers? And maybe talk a little bit about the targeting, addressability that you're sort of working with, and maybe a little bit about the cohorts that you're leveraging that we spoke about in the past.
Yeah, so it's a great question. And it's something that we always are continuing to evolve on. So, historically, we've looked at just audio enthusiasts and folks who are big in consumer electronics. And now we're starting to branch off a little bit more and look at a number of segments. And for that, it's who is already very aware, very inclined to consider Bose. Others are who are aware of us but don't really consider. And then there is a group. It's right now it's a younger audience that isn't as aware of the brand. So talking to each of those groups and then creating subsets of those, because those are still very large audiences, right?
Sure.
I mean, we if you are targeting an audience that's super large, you can't say anything that's going to really resonate with them. So what we're trying to do is find subsets of those audiences, like I mentioned to you, as like cohorts that we're calling them, and understand how can we group them in a way that we can tap into passions and tap into what they really care about and show up in ways that they're going to engage with, that they're going to care about. So we're taking it from the 30,000-foot view down to more of like a 5,000-foot view to help us just be more relevant. And it's new. It's a newer approach that we're testing into, but I'm super excited about it because I think that it just makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I think as we're bringing Bose to new audiences, one thing I was interested in is how do you really expand the assortment, right? Loyalty has been at the top of the list of many retailers, many brands. But how do you keep somebody within that Bose ecosystem, if you will, and really drive attachment?
That is an awesome question. And I would say that it really comes down to the brand and the products and also customer service. So for us, we are really, really focused on bringing the best audio that we can, the most quality, and our customer service is awesome. So it's those harder areas that are harder it's not a marketing world. It's not a marketing issue. It's more of like making sure that we're bringing really, really quality and strong elements to a customer and being reliable. I would say, on the flip side, on the marketing side, again, tapping into those passions is key. So partnering with influencers or groups or whoever that people and consumers are passionate about will keep them coming and keep them interested in the overall brand. But really, from a loyalty perspective, a lot of it is built at the brand level. I mean, you can do some things in terms of also having like ongoing conversations, ongoing like making it really super simple to provide additional value to the customer. But yeah, it's an ongoing project.
No, I don't think there's a perfect answer for that, but I think you did a great job. And no one's, I think there's some out there that are doing it well, but nobody perfectly yet at this point, right? So one thing that always comes up is, performance and measurement, right? So even with, CRM, targeting the right people, bring them in, how does Bose look at measurement? And maybe a little bit of what's been working well for you.
Yeah. So we measure pretty much everything we can. We're a company built by engineers. Data is extremely important. And for any company, you need to know how anything that you're investing in is going to perform. We've had, as I mentioned, we've had strong success with social. We've had success with TV, with personalized media. I think that CRM, you bring up CRM, that's definitely interesting and extremely at the forefront right now as we're looking at potentially, or we are going to a cookieless world soon. So for us right now, it's understanding what's working now, but you also have to be flexible to understand what's going to work in the future because the measurement is going to change.
Yeah, so that is a great topic right there, right? So a cookieless world, what does that even look like? And how is Bose preparing for that?
Yeah, it's a very hot topic right now. I think I've had like 3 conversations on it this week alone. Um, we're looking at ways right now and identifying ways that we can test so we can be better prepared because it's happening and we don't want to be all of a sudden caught where we don't know what to do. So I think there are a lot of things that we're exploring and seeing how can we be more reliant on our first party data? How can we be more reliant on our partners' first party data? And also like really digging into contextual alignments and seeing how that works. So we'll be testing a few of those things over the next few months to see. But I it's going to be interesting. And I think for sure from a data perspective, this is a big one that we were talking about, is we're going to have totally new metrics. I think that's inevitable. And that's why it's so important to test now, because you don't want to all of a sudden have to have new metrics and no idea whether or not that's really working.
Yeah, that's true. We all need to evolve, and the measurement that we've used in the past, whether it be MMM, MTA, right? We talked about that a little bit. Some may not be possible, right? Like there's going to be gaps in information. So really appreciate that there. You talked about social, you talked about some of the experiences that you've been leveraging. What emerging channels do you think are most exciting? And where would you sort of metaphorically want to crack the nut on? How could we leverage this, or where do you see a big unlock for Bose in the future?
Yeah. So I know I mentioned audio, and I do think that especially like the audio space, podcast space, they've come a long way, but I think that there's still places to go in terms of better targeting, better measurement. Um, there are more and more storytelling podcasts that are emerging that are like sitcom like shows. So I'm excited to see how those perform and how just that space continues to evolve. That one's super interesting to me. I think this is an extension of social, but influencers and content creators are definitely here to stay, in my opinion. They can speak to their audiences in such an authentic and unique way, and they're super reliable. They're like the podcast hosts in that they're everything that they say, people take really as like their friend's recommendation. It's present day digital word of mouth, which is extremely powerful. I think the e-com space actually in your world is very interesting. The amount that has had to pivot and shift in the last year was incredible. And it's really forcing brands to have a much more holistic, omni-channel approach in how they're showing up across the partner sites. So I think there's a really strong opportunity and need for brands to be able to create a seamless experience from their owned channels to the partner channels. I think that, the e-com world is just super interesting to me right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know if we can dig into that just a little
yeah.
bit, right? So, resellers, right? You talked at the beginning of this that coincidentally, you were a little ahead of the curve and you started to shut down your brick and mortar locations. Being the fact that a lot of your products are very complex and are on the cutting edge of innovation, how do you bridge the gap of that unassisted sale, right? Especially in e-commerce where you're not able to physically try the product.
hmm That is a really good question. So, as a few things, while complex and well, they are complex and they do have a lot of features. They're also products that most people, for the most part, most people are pretty familiar with. Headphones and speakers, people understand how those work. So it's more about bringing forth content across our partner channels that help bring it to life. So that's one area. For our other products that are a little bit more complex, like frames, for instance,
Yep,
Bose frames are sunglasses that have speakers in the frame, and they're awesome for anybody who hasn't tried them. Um,
I can vouch
you
for that.
know,
They're pretty
thank
awesome.
you. That is definitely more challenging. So one of the things that we've been testing and trying is virtual try on through we've done it through social channels, we've done it through our site. We're starting to explore doing that with partner sites so that people can see how they look on their face through a virtual try on, which I think has been beneficial. Um, Also, ratings and reviews are so important, and having a strategy that helps, like, we are very focused on ensuring that we have strong ratings and reviews, and we take the ratings really seriously. So if we're seeing that we're getting dinged in certain areas, we will absolutely do what we can to fix those issues so that that's showing up, because particularly on reseller sites where people can compare other products, it's a huge factor.
Sure. And shameless plug, I know we've got a partnership with Echo, right? So try and buy is definitely at the forefront, right? We know
Mhm.
that stores traffic is constant, but we are seeing a shift into the e-commerce world. So we want to make sure that people have those resources and content to experience the product in the same way they would as sort of picking it up, trying it on.
Right.
I have a couple of questions coming in here. Getting back to social, definitely a hot topic here. What have you tried, and could you elaborate on really the partnerships or any future plans that you may have or you're thinking about with Clubhouse and TikTok?
So we haven't tried anything with Clubhouse yet. We're more learning about Clubhouse now and seeing. I know that they just recently launched some of their. It's very high level, some of the brand integration. So we're starting to see how we can play there, but to me, it just makes a lot of sense because they're an audio platform. We're an audio company. I think that there's some nice synergies. So more to come on Clubhouse. On TikTok, we've done, we've done some hashtag challenges, which were super fun, and they far exceeded expectations. So I think those are, it's one of those things where you never know how things will evolve. I'm sure that they're going to start to see what else can be done because people quickly say, that's old news. I don't want to do it as much anymore, I'm sure. But it has worked really well for us so far. And then just also having presence across TikTok, using our influencers within TikTok has been strong. So, and also TikTok is just so much fun from a consumer standpoint. Like you can get lost in that app for hours. So I just think TikTok's really fun right now. And it's not just for like Gen Z. In terms of like some of the other platforms, we continue to test and look at different opportunities, different exposures. They're just so great for full funnel activations. Facebook and Instagram alone are so great for, and we see such success across all areas of the funnel.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that feedback. Another one I know when looking at Gen Z, millennials, really pretty much every single demographic that you're talking about is gaming, right? Gaming, the interest has been growing, I would say, in every single age group. What have you sort of looked into there? Have you leveraged anything? Where does sort of esports maybe fit into your future marketing plans?
Yeah, so about a year ago, we launched a gaming headset. It was very well received, and it was our first sort of foray into the gaming world. We have a partnership with League of Legends, so we are definitely getting more integrated into the gaming space. Gaming is, I believe, the second most popular sport in the world now. So everybody, whether you are or are not paying attention to it yet, you should be paying attention to it. Like it also shocks me how much it does, to your point, transcend different demographics, different generations. There are lots and lots of gamers. And so to me, again, it's looking at how can we integrate into the passion there and showcase the passion and how we could provide value for that game. It's also so inclusive. Gaming, you don't have to be, I mean, to be a professional gamer, you have to be really, really, really good. But you can also just be a casual gamer and want great products. So there's so many different ways that you can look into integrating into games, just being present. Twitch is blowing up. So yeah, if you're not paying attention there, start grabbing some of the gamers.
Helpful marketing tip from Marissa. So please take notes there. Getting back to customer centric, and sorry if I'm jumping around a little bit here with some of the questions here. Reaching customers where they want to shop, right? Intercepting them in more entertainment or the platforms that they're leveraging. What is the big pivot that maybe you've made over the last year, 18 months? And could you elaborate on that? Like, have there been any major shifts for what you were doing, as you talked about earlier?
Yeah, I would say the biggest shift has been being more open to driving to partners. So it's we actually partnered with a company called Micmac. It's it helps bring e-retail to the forefront wherever, anywhere on digital, and it gave the consumer the opportunity to purchase wherever they want at their preferred reseller location. So or directly with Bose.com. So that was new for us for sure. I think we're going to continue to look into those types of opportunities and see ways that we can just keep it super simple for the customer. It seems like basic, but it was definitely a new venture for us.
I appreciate that, and apologize. I'm trying to make sure you can hear me here. Mic snafu. So, in looking to those retailers, you've done some interesting things with shoppable content and events, virtual events, shopping events, things like that. I'm not going to mention any retailers. Might not be privy to me. But could you elaborate on that, the success, maybe the interest to do such things in the future? Because these aren't new, right? Like they're almost a mix of entertainment, shopping, and really a number of other things. So have you seen the success there? Is it something that you'll look to do in the future?
Yeah. So China was blowing up in terms of virtual shopping experiences. They launched virtual shopping before the pandemic, but then it really, really took off when the pandemic hit. And quickly, the US started catching on and bringing those to the forefront. So we did try a couple of virtual shopping experiences. One of the most important things, especially in consumer electronics, when you're trying new products or you're testing things, is that wow factor. You don't understand exactly how that headphone really blocks out the noise without trying it, or how you can hear the sunglasses without trying them. So you miss that digital, or you miss that wow experience. We tried to bring the digital wow to the forefront using live shopping. And that was with a partner, as well as we were able to bring our influencer partners in as well. So it was engaging. You got to see it, you got to hear about it, and then you could shop right from the experience too. So I think more of those are to come. It's it's still early days, so I would say for sure there's not tons of people viewing live, but they also live after the fact, and you can go back and view it in an environment that again is super clickable and you can purchase right from it. So those are interesting to me, and I think that the whole way of shopping has changed, not all for bad either, right? I think that there's like a lot of really strong benefits that have come out of the learnings we've had through the pandemic.
For sure. And those events, I mean, they're they're fun, right? You bring in some audio acts, and it becomes entertainment, as I said, in itself. What could maybe publishers, digital platforms be doing better? Is there anything that you would love to see happen in the future as we move towards a cookieless world? We move towards omni-channel solutions. Really, just open it up a little bit here.
I'd love more data, which I know is a controversial thing, but I would love more data to understand, better about your audience, better about how specific to us, not asking for proprietary competitor data or anything like that, but more just about our own customers who are converting or who aren't converting. That's super important too. Is like who is putting us in the basket or looking at us and not making the next step. So I think a huge one would be more data. I would say I also have this like crazy idea for retail that is to, I think people miss, or maybe it's just me, it could just be me. I miss, for instance, like I have 3 little kids, and whenever I have to shop for toys for them, for instance, I
Noise canceling headphones when you do that.
yeah, that is needed too.
Right.
But I miss the true walking through the aisles. And I get that there's in a sense that aisle experience through search and through filters and whatnot, but I actually miss like the unknown discovery of products through that aisle walking experience. So I'm like, can somebody please make a virtual aisle that we could walk through and play with? I would love that. It's kind of crazy, but
yeah, it brings up some interesting topics, right? So that is something that when you go into a sterile shopping environment, right, in some cases, whether it be e-com or other, that if you're not exposed to other brands or products or essentially cross-category marketing, you may miss out on a lot.
Mhm.
So through some of the data that you have received, is there any synergies or sort of nuggets of information that, not proprietary, of course, but that could be maybe interesting, to the audience, what you've seen and maybe some sort of like, hey, we didn't think about that, but that was very useful in our media planning.
Um, that's a great question. I would say probably we've learned more about our audience in the last year than um probably in many prior years. I would say for certain audiences, we thought we had hypotheses of where we thought we were, and we're pleasantly proven wrong, which I think is great. Um, but nothing that comes to mind that is not proprietary, unfortunately.
Okay. So I think one crazy thing is new customer acquisition, right? Like you've been talking about content in different areas, bringing new people into the funnel, right? I think there's limits to some data that we may have, but that is sort of how we grow our business, right? Like it's referrals, things like that. You talked about influencers, really a lot coming together there. Um, do you see influencers being sort of the new level for that? Is social driving new customer acquisition, SEM? What sort of platforms would you say does that the best these days?
Platforms that bring in new customers are probably it's less platforms and more targeting.
Okay.
It's all about, to me, it's identifying the audiences that we aren't as strong with and really starting to customize content to speak to them. And that could be across whatever touch point or whatever platform they spend a good deal of time with. So yeah, I would say less platforms for sure and more identifying the audiences. We've been predominantly a little bit older, and now we're really starting to go after the younger audiences, and that changes things a little bit, um, in some ways more significantly than others. But really honing in and creating content that speaks to a younger audience versus like our standard messaging.
Okay. Another question coming in here. Would you bucket publishers as part of your influencer bucket, since they are influential to audiences as well on a higher scale at times? Or is that categorized differently for Bose, right? Or how do you pick and choose between the two tactics?
That's a great question. So in my mind, in my eyes, I look at influencers as true social influencers and personas, but then we need publisher partners to be able to really put a lot of weight behind content. So, or help us co-create content with influencers. We've done that a lot, actually. This past year, we created content with a publishing partner and one of our influencers. We did it last year as well. Those seem to work really well when we pull all parties together. It's sort of like a trifecta.
It's great to know. And you talked about data and measurement, right? Like what type of KPIs would you be working towards with a content message? Is it a consumption basis? Are we getting to more of the old school models of reach frequency and tuning in, or are you getting conversion metrics in some ways?
First and foremost, engagement and how much people are actually engaging with the content, sharing it, liking it, etc. Then we will look at, so we always have one primary metric and then usually a couple of secondary metrics. So for content, it's usually primary is engagement and secondary would be things like, how much are we driving? How are we driving like qualified visitors to the content or to the site? Things like that.
Okay. So I know we are getting close to time here. Surprisingly, it's been fun. But there's a lot more to talk about, right? So I would just sort of say, what is next for Bose? Like, what are some of those maybe contingency plans that you had thought about, whether it be your virtual, mall that you spoke about there, or, what is something that you're excited about that you want to try, or maybe you haven't done yet? Where do you see everything going?
It's a great question. I would say, we have a lot of exciting things on the horizon. We're in a big year of testing and better understanding those audiences, what content drives, what how to convert a lot of new first time customers to the brand. So we're doing a lot of learning agendas and creating ways that we can better set us up for the future. The cookieless thing is another one. So for us, it's going to be a big learning year. And I think that is exciting in and of itself because it better sets us up for strategic decisions for the future.
That's great. And actually sort of setting the foundation for any successful campaign, right? Like, what are we looking to learn here, or successful partnership, if you will, right? And if you have those KPIs, sort of those key takeaways, those insights that you're trying to find out, then you know what you're getting into up front. You talked about data again, and first party data targeting. How much are you leveraging your own first party data when working with 3P vendor, publisher, retailer, et cetera?
Yeah, we definitely use our first party data for sure. We're looking at new ways to use the first party data, and it is with third party, with publishers, as well as programmatically, where we do a mixture. It's a lot of first party and third party, and then primarily for the first party, it's also creating a lot of lookalikes. So being able to branch out beyond just our known customers to those who would be most likely to convert.
And what would you say is more important? Is it the conversion, or is it brand? Where are you looking today, or is it a mix?
That is such a good question. That is tricky because
I don't know. Have we spoken about that before?
You need both. I don't think we did. You need both for sure. I mean, brand is so important. It's what will get people to remember you when they are in market. It's what they want to align with. They want to understand what your brand stands for, and what you're going to bring forth to the greater good. But at the end of the day, we're a business too, and we need to drive sales. So they're both extremely important. I think that you have to strike the right balance, and I think that there's a for sure need for both pretty much at almost all times.
That's a great answer. And I see Marty joining us now. Well, you've built a tremendous brand. This was a lot of fun today. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And thanks to Brand Innovators for having us. And welcome back, Marty.
Thank you so much, Chris. Marissa, by the way, did I do a good job with your last name?
You did. Thank you.
Okay. I practiced it many times last night and this morning too. And Chris, I'm glad to see that your bed is made. It looks like I could bounce a quarter with that, man.
I get a lot of compliments on that, but I gotta hand it to my wife for really teaching me how to do it. If you want,
got to fold those corners in. Marissa, thanks so much. Listen, and Chris too. I mean, great questions and thoughtful questions and thoughtful answers, Marissa. I think what you touched on so many different areas from Clubhouse, which has now come up, I think, the fourth time during this session, which I've checked out a number of times. It's I'm still trying to figure it out both myself. Like, I feel like creeping sometime when I'm joining a session, and then you also don't want to get called out on like being in. And I've had people invite me to things. It's interesting, but I also find that you can go down a rabbit hole on it and like just get stuck there for a while, and you're just like listening and checking things out. There's so many different channels and topics. So, but I love to hear what you said about testing in a cookieless future. Obviously at Quantcast, that's an important factor for us. We have a tremendous amount of first party data, but have now also created a next generation platform, you know, without cookies.
Mhm.
And so it just is, you know, it's a big challenge. You know, I think the thing that resonated most with me is the metrics and figuring out what that means. You know, personally, I don't think it's going to change dramatically, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be, you know, as you said, Marissa, you still got to drive revenue, right? You're still a brand. You've got a e-commerce site. You've got to drive business one way or the other. I think it's just figuring out what's that best methodology to do that in this new world. But,
Yeah, absolutely.
but you know, listen, we're in digital media. It's an ever-changing world, right?
Yes, indeed.